Hey guys, the Explorer 4 here, Boy465. Welcome back to another podcast, and welcome to another retrospective video. The previous one was on Wes Craven, and this one will be the first part of the George A. Romero Retrospective broadcast. Of course, this is a live thing. It's going to be freaking awesome. You guys can leave comments. I'll try to check below and read your guys' comments and mention them during the video. It'd be so freaking cool. And I got some awesome guests with me today, and I want to thank them so much for joining. And my guests are John Grande and RedBand Cast. So thanks for joining, guys.
Doing every. No problem. Thank you for having us.
No problem, Nate. It's awesome. Awesome to be on.
And today we're going to be talking about George A. Romero, talking about his films, talking about his legacy of movies, and talk about just the varying parts of his career, different points, different kinds of films, and it should be a blast. For me, George Romero is just sort of a guy who I would love to meet. I mean, I would love to meet this guy. He seems like he knows what he does, and he really, really has passion behind his film. And he's really, really cool to the fans. He has made legendary horror films. Definitely a big fan of George A. Romero, and just a person that is really cool during interviews, during commentaries, anything like that. It seemed like he had fun with it. He had really enjoyed it. He just always had fun and pride and enjoyment out of what he did. And that's just what I really love about George Romero. He seemed like a very kind, cool dude to hang out with. And like I heard on sets, like he was really cool to hang out with and talk to about, talk about Dawn of the Dead, talk about Night of the Living. Like it was just one of those things. Like, very, very, very cool talking and stuff. But what are your guys' thoughts on George A. Romero? You guys can start if you guys want to.
Go for it, Steve.
My opinions on him. Well, for the longest time, I wasn't that big a fan of Romero. I really liked like Night of the Living Dead, but I thought it was a little eh. And then, sort of the same thing on Dawn of the Dead, and then eventually Day of the Dead. And probably my favorite one at that point was still Creepshow. And I'd probably say that it still is my favorite George Romero movie. But nowadays, I think I have a little bit more of an appreciation for him. I went back and watched Creepshow, and I've watched, don't want to bring this up too much, right at the beginning, but I watched this documentary by Michael Felcher, the Just Desserts documentary about Creepshow. Yes, fantastic documentary. And so what I did was I watched that, and I sort of thought, I should go back and look at some more of these movies. And I went back and watched the ones that I had seen before, and I was like, wow, these are just fantastic on the second viewing. Well, not second viewing, but like another viewing. I can really appreciate like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead now, and Night of the Living Dead, and and I'm able to appreciate his stuff a little bit more now than I used to. I think that actually comes with age, because I think Romero is not like a filmmaker that's like a light movie filmmaker. He's sort of a filmmaker where his stuff is to the largest part. It's deep stuff for like this genre that's usually looked at as sort of middle grade or low grade entertainment. But he deals with really high concepts, including like religion and politics and stuff like that. So I really enjoy his stuff now. What about you, John?
John?
Well, I can't hear. I didn't hear what Steve said. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. That's
okay.
Technical difficulties.
My opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a huge Romero guy. I'm totally. Since I was a kid, I remember renting, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and Creepshow and Martin. These were movies I would go to Hollywood Video and just rent, along with, Wes Craven films and Carpenter films as well. But I don't know, there was something always about Romero films that I liked, maybe even a little bit more than Carpenter and Craven films, because I liked that his films always had a message. They always had something that they wanted to say. And I liked that even though he was the zombie guy like throughout his entire career and that's like really his legacy, I think he was able to make really other good standalone, horror films. Like he made, Martin, which is my favorite vampire film of all time, a top 10 horror movie for me. Creep Show, which is my favorite horror anthology ever. Monkey Shines, which is a really crazy ass movie. Movies like The Dark Half. It gets on and on and on. He actually did take little steps away from the zombie genre, but I think that all his films, his zombie films, had humor. Maybe aside from Night of the Living Dead, but I like the humor in a lot of his movies. I just thought he was one of those filmmakers that really spoke out to me. I was able to click with, and I actually had the privilege to meet George Romero at a convention in Philadelphia. I meet him, and he was the nicest human being I've ever met. Like, he was so nice. I waited 6.5 hours in line. So I was like, man, this means he's been sitting here for 6.5 hours. And he was just like I was the first one, like very nice, shook my hand, signed my DVD. We actually talked for a few minutes. I actually asked him, stupidly enough, they were having a midnight screening of Dawn of the Dead in a drive-through down the road, and I said, "Are you going to be at the screening?" He was like, "I gotta get some fucking rest, man." That's what they told me, and I was like, "Oh, okay," and I was like, "Oh, you have a picture?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." I still have the picture. It's on my Facebook. If you ever want to see, it was a great experience. Really, really nice guy. I actually thought it was kind of funny. He had a real hard time opening up my Blu-ray of Dawn of the Dead. Like, he couldn't. I had to help him open it. So, I was like, George, I was like, you're not as handy as Bub or anything. I'm sure Bub would have got this DVD open real soon. And he was laughing. He was like, yeah. He's like, sometimes, I'm like a zombie myself. Just a really good guy, really good sense of humor. It was a really cool experience to meet him. I have nothing but respect and love for George Romero. I think he is probably my favorite all-time horror filmmaker, just for personal reasons. Is Carpenter better? Is Craven better from a technical standpoint? I would say yeah, but personally, I go Romero. That's just me. That's just my kind of movies that he makes, and nothing but respect.
Yeah, and I want to throw in a couple other things there. I totally agree with you in that, at the very least, Carpenter is probably the better technical filmmaker from, a standpoint of cinematography and maybe even editing. But George Romero is probably the best writer in the history of horror film. Just gonna go out on a limb and say it. Probably the greatest writer in the history of horror film ever. I can't even think of anybody that really comes all that close. Carpenter came close a couple times maybe, but you got to remember, as much as we love The Thing, Carpenter didn't even write that thing. As much as we love Halloween, he always had his girlfriend helping him. So Romero is always, almost always, by himself, with the stuff that he done. That's something that you just got to respect. I also want to say, that sounds like an awesome story to meet Romero. But, there's another one of my favorite stories of, a guy meeting Romero. I don't know if you guys listen to the Flicks That Church Forgot, but there's this church pastor named Peter Laws from over in England. And he talks about his meeting with George Romero, where he said that Romero asked him what he did for a living, and he said, "Oh, well, I'm a church pastor in England." Oh, and he says, "Wow, man, that's crazy. That's wild." And was talking about how he likes to call the people who really love Day of the Dead these weird little trolls, which is just funny. But because he also says that Day of the Dead is his favorite movie that he made, but also usually it's the weirder people that like Day of the Dead. Of course, I guess that means that I'm pretty weird, but there you go.
Wow, man, that sounds. Yeah, I love it. I think it's probably. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's just for me, I just would lean more towards Dawn, but I can definitely see why people would love Day of the Dead. I still love the film. I still adore the movie. I love the film, but it's just you either lean more towards Dawn or more towards Day. A lot of people lean more towards Day, but and also Dawn too, because Dawn's popular as well. They're all popular, but that's just sort of been like one of those things, especially back in the day when Day of the Dead came out. It was like sort of one of those things like, are you a Day of the Dead fan or are you a Dawn of the Dead fan? So it's very interesting to hear that. It's definitely a life goal of mine to meet Romero. If I could ever meet Romero, if somehow, some way, out of magical power, if I could get money and time and a car and everything to drive to Scarefest, if he was in town and I met George Romero, it would be amazing. It's just one of my life goals, as well as meeting Kane Hodder and John Carpenter and Robert Englund. Those are just some of the people that if I ever met at a horror convention, just freaking blow my mind. It would just be crazy and it'd be amazing. But I also really like how George Romero can work with whatever he's got and still make a masterpiece. I like how a studio can hand him a little bit of money and say, okay, you can make your film. And George Romero will take that money and make one of the best films of all time. Like that's one of those. That's another thing I really enjoy about Romero is he can take a low budget and still make a movie that feels larger than the budget. Like for me, like Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, they feel larger than the budget. You look at the budget, it didn't take that much money to make those movies. Even combined, it didn't take that much money. So it's like you look at it, the films are amazing, especially like we look at Dawn of the Dead and how it's in this mall and you really believe it's in this world of the apocalypse. But the budget behind it was so small, it amazes me. Every time I look at that budget number, I'm like, he had to work with that much money, but the movie's freaking amazing. It's like amazing. It's just brilliant how you can do that. How anybody who can do that, like Sam Raimi or John Carpenter or any like in my opinion, Adam Green, anybody who can take a low budget and make a great and awesome horror film, that's just freaking amazing because it's usually the budgets. Some studios like, well, we didn't have the money to do it. Those people show the studios that you don't need $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million to make a horror film. You don't need that much money. You can make it if you have the passion behind it. So that's another thing I really love about George A. Romero is he can do that. Is he can work with low budgets like that, produce really high quality, amazing entertainment. Just really enjoy it.
That would be a good way to transition into his first film, because he had no budget to make Night of the Living Dead, which is, whether I know it's a film that has not aged well and it really doesn't, for most people, stand the test of time. I'm not one of those people. I actually really love the movie, but I think like when you're talking about Night of the Living Dead, his first movie, it's really like the midnight movie of the 60s. It's really a classic feel, and it really is the movie that started the zombie genre off. I mean, you had movies in 30s and 40s and even in the 20s, your white zombies and your voodoo rituals and stuff. But nobody, I think one of the Sausage Factory episodes, I forget who, I might have been Piz Al, and he was like, nobody cares about voodoo. And that's true. Like, somebody that will like tell you like
only one zombie movie that I've seen that's a zombie movie with voodoo, and that's Surfer and the Rainbow. That's the only movie I've seen that has voodoo zombies that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's also only like recent one too.
Yeah, exactly. When was the last time?
One that's not boring as shit. I feel like this was Romero at his. I really think at his probably scariest. Weirdly enough, too, because I think this was a movie he was trying to be scary with. The whole plot of this brother and sister are going to put flowers on their mother or father's grave. And they get attacked by this zombie, and she scatters to this farmhouse, and you meet Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, who does a great job in the film, probably the only good actor in the whole movie. And then they meet Cooper, and there's that whole kind of conflict in the house, and I like that's really the point of the original Night of the Living Dead. It's the whole point of they can't agree on whether they should stay up, whether they should go in the cellar, whether they should run to Willard, whether they should stay where they are. It's all about that human error and how we can't get along and how we're our own worst enemies and how outside are almost like the pawns in the proverbial chess game. And, we almost are our own worst enemy. That's what Romero's trying to say in this film. And it's not that the zombies win at the end of these movies. It's that we kind of fail. We lose. We don't, work together to get to where we have to be. And that's, I think, something that always spoke a volume with me. I think the point of this movie. And I think it does have some scary parts. I mean, maybe not anymore. It's definitely aged in that department. But I like it. I think it has a good feel to it, a really good atmosphere. Horrible acting, I won't lie, other than Dwayne Jones. But a good message, and I think a movie that's revolutionary. It created a genre. It created a subgenre of the horror genre. So if that's not speaking volumes, I don't know what is. It's definitely one of my favorite zombie films. Absolutely, it has to be. It's just one of those great movies, and I love it. What do you think, Steve?
Oh man, well, I gotta say, I totally agree with you in certain aspects of that. As far as like, Dwayne Jones really is the only good actor in that movie, and the zombies surprisingly are better than some of the like living actors, which is kind of interesting. I also want to point out that like it's really funny to me that like in every single like DVD that you see of Night of the Living Dead, they always show the one tiny bit of nudity that's in Night of the Living Dead. That's like they make it out like it's always going to be sexy in a little bit in a way, but like that's the least sexy bit of nudity I've ever seen in a movie.
It's like non-sexy.
Yeah, but another thing that I want to sort of mention about it though is that like I actually do believe that this is a pretty freaky film. Like you can say that it is dated because it is dated. Like there are a lot of scares in there that are just sort of like, well, whatever. But I think there's one scene at least in it that's like that stands totally the test of time, and that's the matricide scene. The scene where the girl becomes a zombie and just stabs her mother to death.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, absolutely freaky. There's no way that can't be freaky. And I don't know. It's a movie that like really if it weren't set in the time that it was set in, it really I don't think would have had the resonance that it had. It was sort of a case of right time, right place, right time. Because at the same time you had Kennedy getting shot, you had Martin Luther King getting shot, you had the Manson murders actually going to happen like 1 year later, and this was just sort of a time of anarchy. The 60s, I mean, it's bad today, but the 60s were 10 times worse with violence and division in the nation, stuff like that. 60s was really, really awful. And this just sort of exemplified that. And what's interesting about this movie is everybody immediately goes to the like the racism thing, and that is an important and awesome thing that's part of this movie. It's a fantastic message of that. Although personally, I don't believe that he was actually trying to put forth any kind of politics. I think. Yeah. Like I think he was just making a scary movie. Of course, I'm kind of out of the school that a lot of scary movies that end up having social context, well, not social context, but social content in it. Most of those people were just wanting to make a scary movie, and it happened to come out at the right time where people were like, oh, well, this is what it means. And also, I sort of latch on to the idea that with Night of the Living Dead, critics wouldn't have liked this movie because it was just a schlocky, cheesy horror movie to them, but audiences latched onto it. So they had to find some way to describe why people liked it. And that's why they sort of ascribe the political narrative to it. Now, it does, I think, if you watch it with that context have a lot of political resonance. But you can watch it in totally different context, and this is what I think makes a great movie. You can watch it in a totally different context, and it can talk about anything you want it to, because it's sort of a blank slate kind of thing, almost like Michael Myers' Mask. You can project onto it what you think is the scariest or what you think is the most important. To me, Night of the Living Dead represents moral corruption and rotting away, just like the zombie's flesh, of a moral sense in America at the time, and a totally different thing with it. But I think that's what one thing that's like really great about it. The script is so good that you can just sort of project this stuff onto it. Tarantino said that what he wants to do is, if 100 people go see his movie, he wants those 100 people to have seen 100 different movies. And I think you can totally do that with Night of the Living Dead. Nobody sees Night of the Living Dead exactly the same way. This movie is great because it's technically excellent, especially for its for both its time period and its budget. No matter what you say, like, one thing that George Romero always does well is editing, and this is a really well edited movie. It's got a good screenplay. Dwayne Jones is like perfect in his role, and I couldn't imagine anybody else in it. That's why I haven't seen the Tony Todd version yet. And I love Tony Todd and everything, but I just can't imagine anybody else in that role. I don't know. And even, a lot of people make fun of the zombies because they don't look like what we would consider zombies. But back then, it was just, this was innovative because zombies always looked like voodoo people, or they looked just kind of normal. These zombies were dark, and they were not gory necessarily, but they were creepy looking, and I sort of like that understated, round circles around the eyes, black circles around the eyes, and stuff like that. And of course, Tom Savini was going to do the makeup effects for this, but I think that would have actually been to the movie's detriment. I think that could have actually harmed how the movie would have been presented. Of course, you can argue back and forth about that, but anyway, yeah, I really like Night of the Living Dead. I think it's a masterpiece, and like I like it a little bit more every time I watch it. It's one of those types of movies that's sort of in the same category as like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or we were talking before we started about Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. It's always like getting better every time you watch it. And that's something I love about Night of the Living Dead. And I want to I'll stop talking here in just a second. I know I'm acting like Cole from the Sausage Factory, but I'm gonna talk just a little bit longer about like voodoo zombies really quickly. What's awesome about this movie is, just like John said, it really introduced zombies into the popular lexicon of how we describe zombies today. And it took together like all these different influences, and it didn't seem to be influenced by any of those zombie movies before, because you had like probably one of the first zombie movies I'd say is probably White Zombie. I wouldn't say it's probably the first one. I think there may be a couple of ones before that, but probably the most famous of the early ones is White Zombie, where literally the only good thing about the movie is Bela Lugosi and a couple of like shots of his eyes. That's about it. Bela Lugosi like rocks that movie, and that's about it. And then you've got one other really good zombie movie before that, which was something along the lines of oh shoot, it was like The Body Snatchers, which I think had some zombie stuff in it, which was also good. And you had some good Living Dead type movies, but they were never quite zombies. This movie brought forth the zombie as we know it, and sort of Romero furthered that when he got to Dawn of the Dead. But Night of the Living Dead is a masterpiece. There were a lot of imitators that came out of Night of the Living Dead, not the least of which was Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Bob Clark's first horror film. So yeah, you had all these imitators coming out, which never could really stand up to it, and you had the fact that like the copyright license was like expired really early, and so it got out everywhere, so everybody could play it on any station, no matter what.
Was
and,
money off it, but some of that money wasn't being made because it was by a different company that was releasing it.
Yeah,
a lot of
and you know, you were able to open it up for like people to make fun of the movie and see the movie in a different light and stuff like that, which I think actually helps the movie. I mean, Mystery Science Theater 3000 has done it on their show, and I think that only helps the movie's legacy because you can see this movie so many different ways. It's either like a so bad it's good, or a movie that's just so great and far above a lot of the stuff that was coming out then. I would say that like it's sort of like Hitchcock if Hitchcock did the supernatural stuff, you know, because it was a little bit more realistic, but it still had a little bit of this gothic tinge to it. I really like the movie, and I'll probably talk exactly the same way about Dawn of the Dead and Creepshow and a lot of his other movies. But this is a great movie.
For me, when I got introduced to Night of the Living Dead, the first time I seen it, I'll be honest, I didn't care for it. The first time I seen it, because I was about 12 years old or 11 years old, buying it from a thrift shop, VHS tape, really bad, low quality VHS tape. And maybe it was because of how young I was when I seen it. I don't know, because maybe I just didn't have the patience to really and really just see the details that make this movie great. And then as I got older, I watched it more, and I started to appreciate it more, and I started, really seeing those details that really make it a great film. And I bought the movie on a DVD, really bad DVD, awful DVD. And it was like a while ago I bought this DVD, and it was horrible. It was worse than VHS. I'll just say that it was horrible. And I rewatched it on that, and you'd think that would help it, but it really didn't because it was so dark I could not tell what was going on. But I rewatched it on that, and from what I could see, I really loved it that time. And then I bought this really, really nice DVD that had it's not an actual print of George Romero. It's not an actual George Romero signature, but it's like a print of it. But still, it's a cool thing to have right on the front cover. It's not the real thing, but it's a cool thing to have on there. But it was really clear, really crystal clear picture and audio, and it had a lot of features on it, which I couldn't check out, and just looks great. And I watched it on that, and I gotta say, even though at first I was sort of topsy-turvy about it, I was like, I don't know. The more I watched it, the more I loved it, because I got older and I started really appreciating and really reading the backstory behind the film and about why it was made. And yeah, I mean, it really did tie into the 60s darkness. I mean, that was a really dark decade. I mean, you had all this stuff going on. The culture was changing to something that we'd never seen before. And this was a movie that helped reflect that and helped showcase that. But I would agree with you, Steve. It probably wasn't 100% meant to be like that. But it was sort of one of those things where it just sort of fit into it. It didn't probably mean to do it, but it came out at the right time. And just sort of blended into it. It fit the time. And I think that what really impressed me about this movie is, once again, the budget. The low budget of this film. It was a crazy low budget, and they had some conditions that were just crazy. They were shooting a real house, real locations, and this was all done practically. And yeah, some of the effects don't really look that great. Like the effect where someone grabs like a stick or a hammer or something like that and smacks the hand that comes through the window, and it looks like they can see like paper and stuff. That didn't really look that great. But I think it started off, the effects that started off great, and then it sort of got better as the film went along, because you had that great effect of the zombies devouring people, and of course, it was all bought from the market. It was all real neat stuff, and the girl who rips the guy's arm off, and you see his arm and stuff. That was a pretty good effect. You don't really see it like him get his arm ripped off, but you see the after effect, and it's pretty good. But Night of the Living Dead is a legendary film, and it's one of those movies where I've heard different opinions on it. I've heard varied opinions on it. I've heard that it was okay by some people. I've heard that it was bad by some people. That's totally understandable. This is a movie of a certain quality. Like, you gotta understand, this movie didn't have a lot of money to be made, and they sort of had to do what they had to do. So there are points where you can tell that some of the effects are fake or something like that, and you can tell there's like a bit, some of the cuts in the film are like really awkward, like they'll cut really early. But that doesn't really bother me personally. Like, I'm just one of those who can watch it and really love it for what it did, and really enjoy the fact that you do have the African American lead, because at this time you didn't have that. The most you had, I believe, was an African American smacking somebody on screen, but you didn't really see too many African American leads in films, and this movie helped propel that, helped get African American leads in other films. And I would think that it would also help the black exploitation films in the 70s, and it would also just help in general to help African Americans, become leads in film. So I really love that. I also love how just eerie the film is. There's an energy to this movie, like, of hate and of sinister, really dark and really, really foreboding atmosphere. And I think it's, like I said, also fed by that because of the 60s and everything that was going down, protests, war, killings, beatings, like all this stuff was going on. I think it also helped. This movie helped, seeing that. This movie was reflecting that. It might not have meant to, but when I watch it, I definitely get the feeling that sometimes you can tell it's a 60s film. You can tell it has that anger of the 60s in it. And I just really, really enjoy it. I love the first movie by George Romero. I just love it. I think it's great. Yeah, Night of the Living Dead, guys. And the next movies we're talking about, we'll sort of be skimming over, because if we have seen them, we don't like them, or if we haven't seen them, then we haven't seen them. The next movie made in 1971 was There's Always Vanilla. I have not seen it. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I might just skim over this one. I don't know anything about it.
I don't know anything about it. I know it's a comedy or a romantic comedy. I've heard it's god awful. I would actually like to see it though. I like the title.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either, but I had the chance to see both it and Season of the Witch, because there was an edition of it that used to be rented out at Hastings before Hastings died, where it had Season of the Witch was the main movie, and then sort of in the little corner it said with There's Always Vanilla. Yeah, with There's Always Vanilla. And I was sort of like, I kind of want to see it, but I kind of don't. And I always ended up renting something else. And now I haven't seen either of those movies. I hear I'm not missing anything with Season of the Witch / Hungry Wives / whatever else it's called.
Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear I'm not missing a darn thing with that. But I have heard that There's Always Vanilla can be viewed as an all right little romantic comedy, and I don't know, like sometimes I like rom-coms, so whatever.
I've never seen There's Always Vanilla, but I have seen the Season of the Witch, and it is really, really bad. I mean, it's a cure for insomnia. It's actually, I believe, it's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it if you have Amazon Prime. I watched it and I was really, really let down. I actually think like it's the worst movie ever made. He said he wanted to remake it. If he could ever remake a movie, that would be the one. I don't know. I didn't see much potential, but it was what it was. It actually, some of it's shot a lot like The Crazies. That was maybe the only like positive I took away from it. But totally not a good movie.
I haven't seen it yet. I have no clue what it's about. I have no clue, other than the runtime seemed pretty short. So that is why I was like, well, it's not a long movie, so I'll check it out one day. But I just heard that it was bad, and it's a really low rating on IMDb. I just don't know. But Season of the Witch, that came out, and then after that we have the original The Crazies, which I did see from 1973. Now the thing with this movie is, I'm sure, I don't know if you guys are fans of it, but I'm sure there's probably fans of this film. And there's a few things I can really appreciate about this movie, but I thought overall it was just a very, very slow-paced film. And watching the movie all the way through, I just felt like most of it was hearing it through radio reports, like, and we're not even really seeing what was going on. Now, I will admit this: the scenes that do involve the actual crazy people and insane people, those were good. Those were really good scenes. Those are creepy scenes. There's a scene where this girl, she kills somebody and she keeps on sweeping the floor like nothing happened. And it's creepy. But there's probably only like 2 or 3 scenes, maybe even 4 scenes. I can't really remember too many scenes in the movie. Besides the beginning was also really good as well, but I just can't really remember too many scenes in the film involving these crazy people. And I understand what it's going for. It's going for, you can't trust the government 100%, and this is what the government was going to do. This is how far they're going to go. I get that, but to have it take place around a guy with a unibrow and his girlfriend and other friend, which the best actor was his friend. That was the best actor out of them all. I didn't care for him and his girlfriend. I didn't care for. I know they run into the guy from Day of the Dead. They run into him and his daughter. There's a really creepy scene that happens later on in the film. Like, it has good stuff to it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it has good stuff. It's not like it's a horrible, horrible film. It's just, after I watched it, I just wasn't really too big of a fan of it, personally. I was much more of a fan of the remake. The remake was intense. A lot of stuff going on. Had that suspense, but yet also had that great this craziness, for no pun intended, but craziness. Just had that insanity, but it also had a fast pace. And I don't know, just one of those very few cases I would prefer the remake over the original. But if you guys are fans of it, and if anybody else is watching is a fan of it, that's totally fine. I can see why you'd be a fan of it, because it does have a pretty decent atmosphere. It does have some really, really great, crazy people. Those were great, especially the opening of the film, very intense. But I felt what really lost me with this movie was just the fact that you didn't really see too much. It was mainly through like radio reports and people just saying, "Oh yeah, this happened," but I'm like, "Yeah, but we didn't see it happen." And it's like, I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but it's just how I felt with this movie. A very slow pace. I didn't really care for most of the cast. I remember the score being pretty decent as well. But, I don't hate it. I think if I did a review on it, it'd be a review. It would not be a rant, because I don't hate the film. But, it's just not really a film I'm a big fan of. I'd say at the most I'd be a tiny this year for me. But what are your guys' thoughts on it?
John, you go ahead. I haven't seen The Crazies. I haven't even seen the remake. I'd like to see, just out of a curiosity, and there are a lot of Romero films I need to see. This is one of them. Right up there with O.J. Simpson, Juices on the Loose. That's about it.
Yeah. I seen that in filmography. I'm like, oh crap. Oh man.
I would really like to watch that too, just to laugh my ass off. But The Crazies actually, I think, is a really good movie. There are a lot of like really bad fake gunshots and sound effects. Like, it's a really bad movie for sound effects. Like, it has every single sound effect in the movie is just like you're like, Jesus, that was like, are they kidding? Like, it literally sounds like it's that bad of sound effects. But literally everything else in the movie I really like, and I think the lead actors do a good job. I think the whole Trixie virus, and there's actually a scientist in this movie played by Richard France, who went on to more famously, people more remember him for Dawn of the Dead as the guy with the eye patch on the television. Dummies, that great They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. One of my favorite actors. I love Richard France. I think he does a great job in this movie as this like kind of rebellion kind of scientist. I mean, this is not full on horror. This is more like action horror. You have Lynn Lowry in this, who's horrible. You know, but I guess she's good at being horrible. I mean, there wasn't much that called for her role. I believe Richard Liberty is in this film, who went on to be in Day of the Dead, which is a really, really good movie too. And he does good in that as well. He's Dr. Frankenstein in it. I really like. I think the cast does a good job. I like the opening of the film, like they said, really good feel. Not the greatest ending though. Really not. One of those very anticlimactic ending.
Yeah, I have to agree on that as well.
What's that?
I just was saying I agree with that as well. I didn't really care for it.
Yeah, I thought it was a little anticlimactic ending. I do like the stuff with the guy and his wife, and he's trying to hide her as he sneaks in. I liked that stuff, but I thought the very ending of the movie was really like, that's where this ends, you know. And you definitely get a Dawn of the Dead feel with the ending because it does involve a helicopter. You know, I won't ruin it, but it's definitely like a really cool experimental film that Romero made. Like I think I have it on Blu-ray. I think it's a really good watch. As for that remake, I don't agree at all. I think that's a horrible goddamn movie. Timothy Oliphant is just not good. It's just not. I don't know. I thought the whole cast in that remake was just, and also like that remake was just basically like a 28 Days Later kind of. That's what it felt like to me, at least. It didn't really take. It felt like an infected person movie with that name on it. It really felt nothing like the original movie. I really don't like that remake, and that director I don't believe has directed a film since. So apparently, I know it made money and it got pretty decent reviews, but. You know, obviously the studio probably was upset because the director has not.
The reviews vary on it. You know, it's one of those remakes where either you love it or you hate it.
We dodged a bullet because the guy who directed the Crazies remake was gonna work on either the Friday the 13th, the new Friday the 13th, or the new Halloween movie. So maybe we dodged a bullet. I don't know. So
I heard he was gonna make Flash Gordon.
Oh gosh!
I didn't know he's gonna stoop that.
I remember hearing that. I walked into the theater. They were like, "This guy's gonna make Flash Gordon." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then when I saw the movie, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, I really hope it happens. That's gonna be like really bad.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's not like one of the greatest remakes of all time. It really isn't. It is very similar to 28 Days Later.
It's really has nothing really to do with they just took like the plot, but they made their own movie with it. I mean, I guess that's what people would say, like, oh, well, that makes it stand out. And it does, I guess. I don't know, just not one of my kind of movies. I do like the original The Crazies, though. I really would say it's George Romero's experimental film. Like, it really has a lot of that kind of feel and vibes. Like, it almost feels like Night of the Living Dead is more of a veteran movie than The Crazies. Feels like he didn't look like he knew what he was doing as much with the Crazies, which isn't a bad thing. It's actually really entertaining to watch and interesting. I give it a thumbs up. I think it's a pretty like above average film.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I could totally see what people love this movie. I mean, I think the Crazies original. Like I said, I would not even do a rant on it. I don't hate it at all. I think like it does have some good things, great things to it. Like I said, the opening is really crazy. No pun intended once again. But, you know, it's just really insane. And I will admit this, too. Like, some of the scenes involving the crazy people were better than the remake at times, you know. Just how I think the problem with the remake is sometimes they gave too much dialogue. And in the first movie, you didn't need too much dialogue. In the original movie, I like that paranoia of you have not only this virus, but you have this government going this far, killing innocent people, killing them. Like, it was definitely, I would say for the time, definitely a shocking idea. You know, the government killing people. They're willing to do this just to make sure this doesn't get out. And
he had no money. That was the problem. Nobody really saw the like. I mean, a few people saw the Crazies, but it had no impact. Like, it would have worked as like a midnight movie, kind of like had it been promoted like that, but it wasn't. It just had no steam behind it at all.
Yeah. But anyways, guys, we're going to move on to the next film. Now, we're going to skim over a few things. Stuff like, I guess he did something called The Winners, TV series documentary. And then he did O.J. Simpson, Juice and the Loose. which you guys mentioned. And then they did Magic at the Roxy, which is a TV special in '76. I have no clue what these are. Then in 1978, he directed Martin. Now, this is a movie that I heard from John Grande. I seen his review on it, and I was like, "That's a really interesting idea." And I really never heard about this movie before. I think I've seen it mentioned once on documentaries a long time ago. It was like about lower budget horror films, like underrated lower budget horror, something like that. And I showed a quick little segment with Martin, but I forgot the name of the movie, so I was like, "Oh man, what's that movie called? What's the movie called?" And then I seen John Grande's movie, his review, and I was like, "Holy crap, that's that movie I heard about a little bit." And then he went on and talked about the story, and it's just a really interesting story, and it's a really new approach to a vampire flick. And I think, like with Martin, it's the combination of a really gritty atmosphere, this really dingy, dirty street atmosphere. Definitely a totally just this really gritty atmosphere. Just the thing, like it's just really gritty, very realistic. Definitely a Pittsburgh film, and it's just really really well done atmosphere. It feels very real, and the acting is top notch. You have George Romero making a cameo, Tom Savini making a cameo. You have a lot of that great stuff. I really enjoyed the guy who played Martin. Did a really good job, really good job. I just really love the impact of the film. Even to the last shot of the film. Yeah, it's a bit anticlimactic, but it's definitely impactful. Definitely, it's a powerful film in a way, and it uses some really good effects, but it does have to rely on like gore and more gore. It does that powerful stuff without having to rely on too much gore, but it does have a lot of great stuff going to it. Really, really enjoy it. I'm glad that John Bryan recommended the movie because I checked it out and I'm like, this is definitely a movie I gotta pick up now. But yeah, it's really, really a great movie, and I really, really enjoy it. So you guys can go and talk about Martin if you guys want to.
Again, John, you launch into this one. This is one where like there's like a couple factors influencing like the reason why I haven't seen it. First off, I do hear it's like probably Romero's best movie by a lot of people. Like people who love Romero love this movie, and they believe it's like upper echelon, like at the very least, like top 3 stuff.
I would definitely agree with that. It's fantastic.
For me, there's a couple reasons I haven't seen it. Number one, I don't like graphic nudity in movies, especially horror movies. And I know there's a little bit of nudity in that one, and maybe not too graphic, and maybe something I could skip past. But
there's not much nudity in it at all.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? See, okay. I think maybe somebody got the IMDb listing wrong then. But anyway, that's just something that was influencing me. Another reason is because I like to own the movies I see, and the movie is so cost prohibitive. It's like $72 for some used bare bones DVD. Now, I did hear it's on YouTube by Nate, so I'm gonna see if there's a way I can find it because I've really been wanting to see this movie. It's like one of my highest movies on my list. Like I want to see the like I know I can't buy. so it's one of those movies, and I don't want to put like $72 into it, no matter how good a movie it is. Like I wouldn't like my favorite movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life. If I had to pay $72 for like even if it was the best Blu-ray copy you could possibly get of It's a Wonderful Life, I would not drop that in 10 years. I'd have to save up for 10 years for that, even if it was just $72. So
I know there's like some movies out there like Stepfather 3 and Night of the Demons 3 and stuff like that. They're like $300 to get the DVD. Like $400, $500. I'm like, who's gonna pay that much for that movie? Stepfather 3.
Yeah. I remember when Madman was a lot of money to get, and then when I saw Madman, I was like, "Holy shit! I'm glad I didn't pay that much." I was
Yeah, it's
like,
why would I buy Stepfather 3? I haven't even heard of that movie. Like, I didn't even know there was Stepfather 3. I did not even know. Heck, did you guys know that there's a Rosemary's Baby 2?
Oh Lord.
It's freaking awful. It's awful. It's so bad.
I never seen it or heard of it, but
I couldn't finish it. It was horrible. It was horrible. Couldn't finish it. That's how bad it was. I usually finish movies. I couldn't finish that movie. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
This movie is driving me bonkers. I can't, as the acting is so bad. Like, I seriously, that movie has some of the worst acting I've ever seen on screen. And I'm being real about that. I've seen a lot of bad acting. I just got done watching Leprechaun in the Hood. So, I've seen bad acting. But that was horrible. Sorry, I had to say that. Whew. It was bad. TV movie.
Yeah. So what do you think, John? I mean, obviously you're a huge fan. You've talked about it a ton, and you're one of the reasons I want to see it. So you better give us a good review here.
Now the pressure's on. Well, first of all, I did. This is number 9 on the top 20 horror movie list of all time of my personal favorites. And I did do a full in-depth review. If anybody watching this or either of you two want to go back and watch that as well, but I think this movie is the most underrated horror movie of all time. I really do. Like, if I was to have my quote on the DVD sort of thing, I would write, I really believe that this is the most under-talked about classic horror movie of all time, because it's just one of those movies that had, first of all, it had the originality factor. There's not a movie like Martin. There hasn't been a movie since Martin that's like Martin. There's no vampire film like Martin. It's very different because, first of all, you have best, I think, opening scene in horror movie history. You have Martin on the train playing solitaire by himself, and he's slowly stalking this really pretty woman. And she goes in the shower, and he's kind of slowly, you don't really know what he's about to do. Like, he has these needles, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you're really sitting there, wondering, like, what is going on right now in this movie? And as the girl comes out of the bathroom, he kind of, tackles her to her bed, gives her this needle as an injection, and there's this scene where there's no music score, and she's like, "What are you gonna do to me?" And he's like, "I'm sorry," and he's almost crying. And then you see what he does to her. They insinuate that he rapes her. That you don't see any of that though. And he slices her wrists and starts drinking her blood. And then you get the opening credits, and I was like, what the, like, whoa, like, that is how you open a film, man. Like, it's that you're so creeped out. I mean, you goosebumps, and your hair on your arms starts standing up. It's real. And then, oh, Gideon's there.
Hey, Gideon!
I'm offended that y'all would start this without me. You know how much Dolly fan I am. And Nate, I've been working on a huge project.
Gideon's gone full SJW.
That's cool, man. I sent you a couple invites, man. Sorry about that.
Well, I've been busy working on my horror movie and making music.
That's awesome, dude. I had one that I was working on, but I don't think I'm going to shoot it anymore because it was just bad. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I'll try to one day.
Hey, Johnny, nice to see you, man.
What's that?
Nice to see you, man. I see you, RedBand.
Nice to see you too, Gideon. Don't go full SJW with your getting offended and crap.
Oh, no, I ain't getting offended. No, dude. No, true story, man. I once got slapped by an SJW.
Oh,
really?
No,
you're my hero,
crap.
then.
I was like white Miller, right? You white there scum. Oh, I'm privileged to call you this because I hate all men. So anyways, sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine, dude. We're doing a George A Romero broadcast, and we're talking about Martin. I don't know. You want to finish or?
Yeah. I love when he gets to his cousin Kuda's house, and he kind of lays down the rules of the film. He's like, I know what you are. I know you're a vampire, and I know what you've been doing. And if I hear of any murders in the town a single time, that's the end of you. I will murder you, and I'll try to salvage your soul. And you're like, right then and there, and you're like, then Martin states that he's 84, but yet he looks like a teenage kid. Like, it's just very off. Like, it's like you keep questioning yourself. Like, did they just say that? And I just love the atmosphere of this film, of the grungy kind of Pittsburgh area, with all the steel workers and all these things. And like, they have some shots of Martin working in the grocery store, and it's like Romero's really painting a picture of kind of how the Pittsburgh area was at a down period at that time, financially especially. And the crime rate was up and stuff like that. And I just love the whole point of the film, and like how Martin states that there's never any real magic, and he has this really cool relationship with Christine Forrest, who went on to marry George Romero. And I just love this question that they pretty much ask you, like, do you think Martin's a vampire? Do you think he's not a vampire? And they really leave it up to you. And there's this subplot love story with Martin and this woman he delivers groceries to, and he's falling in love with her. It's really like almost a drama movie in a lot of scenes, There's a lot of horror sprinkled in there, and I think Romero does a great job. But to me, and this will be the last thing, I don't want to go too long. If you want to see my in-depth, totally see the review. I'm jumping all over the place here because I know we got to get to more stuff. But my favorite parts of this movie by far are the stuff with the radio call-ins. And Martin's calling into this radio station, and they're calling him the Vamp. And like, he's spilling heart and guts out to this guy. And they're almost laughing at him. Like, he's like the biggest thing on their radio show. They're like, oh, how many have you killed, Count? And he's like, it's not like that. I don't just kill just to kill, He says, sometimes I get the shaky feeling, and I have to go do it, and, because I feel it's right. And I'm too shy to have sex with someone who's awake. And it's really like, it's deep stuff. And what's so funny is, what Romero's really saying there is that, sometimes you really want to be serious with someone and spill your heart out to them, and they almost laugh at you. You know what I mean? It's that feeling of being so alone. They really paint that picture that Martin is alone in this world, and nobody has Martin's back. And it's just, I would say it's my second favorite Romero film.
Yeah.
Dawn, because that's my favorite film ever. But I think Martin is the most underrated horror movie of all time. And to anybody watching this, totally see it. It is so worth the watch, and it is an absolute gem. Couldn't recommend it more.
Yeah, it's definitely a great. Not only is it a great film, but it's like a great film in general. Just in general, it's a great movie. And I agree, man. It's just great. Gideon, real quick, do you want to mention, talk about George Romero and how big of a fan you are, and what you guys say about George Romero real quick?
I thought you never were going to ask.
That is awesome.
Got Zombie, Italy, release, Zombie 2.
Oh, those are VHSs too.
Yeah.
I got a whole dresser full of them.
Oh, cool. Do you have Martin?
I don't own any DVDs. I only own VHS tapes. I just love that.
So 80s.
Yeah, I'm born in the 80s.
VHS.
2000s, I was born in the 80s.
Have you ever seen Martin before? It's a horror film by George A Romero. It's about the guy who, he thinks he's a vampire and stuff, and it's just a really interesting film. Me and John, and we just definitely recommend it. It's just a really, really good movie. But the next movie we're going to be moving on to real quick. Actually, George, what's your thoughts on George Romero real quick? Sorry about that.
That's fine, man. My thoughts on George Romero was just, he's a really inspiring guy, and he's been other things since in horror movies, if you know that. If any of y'all play Call of Duty.
Yeah, I play Call of Duty.
My friends all told me about the Call of Duty thing with Romero.
Yeah, that was cool. They had him as the the director that had Robert Englund. And that was just,
Robert Englund. They had the girl from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
oh yeah.
They had Michael Booker, Dave Trail, a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, think about the guy though. He inspires me so much. I mean, the first film I ever seen of George Romero was Night of the Living Dead, and that was back in, I don't know, 2013. I've never seen a zombie movie since then. I was about probably 11. I was 11, and I shot to the scene on this Channel 3, not the public access. They had on the scene of Night of the Living Dead where you saw the zombies breaking into the house. And that just, like, captivated me. I was like, what the hell's going on? And are these people eating her? And I kept watching it. And I watched almost to about 4 a.m. And it got to that iconic scene where it shows them shoot Ben in the head, and they drag his body out to hooks when you heard that just eerie music. I didn't sleep for weeks. That's how much it messed with me. Because it was shot so real like they had like a low budget, shot in Pittsburgh. Actually, I live right next to Pittsburgh, and it was just a really good shot, and it really inspires me. And I want to meet George Romero one day.
He's an awesome guy to meet. I can tell you.
Yeah,
It's my life. It's one of my life goals to meet him.
Yeah, I wish Lucio Fulci was still alive. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah, Lucio Fulci definitely sounded pretty interesting. I did hear though, however, what was that?
I'll go to Fulci's grave with you, Gideon, if you want. We can.
The thing about Lucio Fulci though is I heard he was a really interesting individual, but I did hear, however, that he didn't treat women very well. Like on the set, some movies I heard he talked to women, very harshly. But as a director, I gotta say he is a fantastic director. Love his work. I haven't seen other Lucio Fulci movies. I probably should, but I definitely check him out. I know there's City of the Living Dead. There's lots more. And I love zombie. I want to get a T-shirt of zombie. I want to get a poster of zombie. All stuff.
I got a quick question for Steve. Have you ever seen House by the Cemetery?
I want to see that too.
No, actually, again, that's one where like they had a copy of it at Hastings, and I just kept passing over it. I think I may have seen like a couple of scenes from it, and that's like one that I'm really interested in because like I obviously I like Lucio Fulci. I really enjoyed City of the Living Dead. I enjoy his basic ripoff of Dawn of the Dead, which is of course Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters, whatever you want to call it. It's got like 50 freaking titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed what I've seen from him, and I like Fulci. I despise his politics and opinions on religion, but he's a very talented filmmaker. So I'd love to see House by the Cemetery. What were you gonna say about it, John?
That was I just want quickly. That one's also my top 20. I did a video on that one for my channel. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite movies ever. It's awesome, like so atmospheric. It's actually kind of different from the normal Fulci film because it really relies more on the atmosphere. There's gore in it as well. I mean, it wouldn't be Fulci if there was no gore. But it's really like with the really good story, and I will.
Yeah. And atmosphere and gore.
Other than that, past that, one of my favorite horror movies ever. Another awesome movie with a cool opening. But I'm sorry, I actually was wondering because I thought Steve had said something about one of the past. I just opinion, but he hasn't seen it, so I'm obviously tripping.
That's definitely
no. It's fine.
You can go on, Steve. See?
Is Steve frozen?
If
Sorry, everybody's frozen for me.
no, but you can go on.
I'm still here a little bit. If somebody wants to go ahead and talk over me, that's fine, because I didn't really have anything to say.
You want to move on to the next?
I didn't have a.
All right. Well, like I said, I really want to see that movie too. Isn't that the one with? Am I thinking about that, or I'm thinking about something else, like House at the Edge of the Park with
House at the Park is Deodato, and that's like a rape revenge movie. That's a good one too.
Yeah. Doesn't that have the guy from? Doesn't that have Krug?
Yeah. It has Krug from last time. It's like a little bit above average rape revenge flick, but like nothing you have to like run out and see now. It's good, but good.
I did see your review on House of Edge of the Cemetery, and it definitely interested me. I'll definitely check it out one day. But
it's real underrated.
Yeah, I heard it was good from a lot of people. Well, from the few reviews I've seen of it, people enjoyed it. But moving on to the next film from 1978, the classic, the one, the only. Dawn of the Dead. So Dawn of the Dead is a 1978 George Romero film, and it's been considered to be one of the best zombie movies of all time. It is my all-time favorite zombie movie. It's my all-time favorite Romero movie. I agree with that. I agree with John on that. Completely. It's just a perfect low-budget horror film. And even if you look past the budget, it's just a great and general horror film. Like, just in general, a great movie. And it's just got so much going for it. It's got that great comic book feel that George Romero is going for. It has fun effects, great idea, the great music. I really enjoy the music. I know a lot of it was free, but most of the music I got was awesome. I do want to see the other cut, the alternative cut by what's his name? What's his name?
Argento?
Argento cut. Yeah, I wanted to say for some reason Fulci, but I'm like, there's no way it's not Fulci.
That's not out of the movie at all.
Yeah, like that I heard was much more serious than this movie, the American version, the European cut, or whatever. I heard it was much more of a serious cut. But I'm definitely going to be interested in seeing that, as well as the Spanish version of Dracula. Those are two alternate versions of films I want to see. But just an altogether great movie. And like I said before, it's just a movie that worked really well on low budget. Even though it's a low budget movie, it still has that great just world feel. You feel like it's a world of the dead, like it's an apocalypse, like it's a zombie apocalypse. You really buy that. The acting is great. Ken Foray. I also really enjoyed the other two characters, Flyboy and his girlfriend, or his wife, or whatever. I really enjoyed her. I really enjoyed the zombies. I know it's like, well, they look blue. It's like, yeah, but that's just like one of those things about the movie is I always remember Dawn of the Dead. The zombies are blue. That's like always what I remember. It's just a great part of it. Or sometimes they're gray, sometimes they're greenish looking, but most of the time they look kind of blue. But I just always remember that this movie, and it gave the zombies a great look. It gave the movie a great comic book feel, and even the bad gore effects. Well, the gore effects are great, but the bad blood effects. People said it was like another crayon, but like it helped the movie. It really did. Even though it looks bad, it's a positive. It finds its way to be a positive. It adds to that comic book feel that George Romero is going for to film. And I just think that it's a fantastic zombie film, a fantastic horror film, and it's my favorite George Romero movie. So anyways, guys, what's your guys' thoughts on George Romero's Dawn of the Dead? Gideon, you can go first if you want to.
Well, actually, guys, I probably have to get out of here, man, because I got some stuff to do with the family. I got to plan a trip we're going on. I'm sorry about that, though. I'm sorry, guys. We'll do this again sometime, though.
Fine, man. It's totally fine.
Hey, you guys are awesome. I'll see you guys later.
Take care. Rock on, brother.
Bro. See you later.
Run for the flesh eaters!
Okay, well, I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
So Dawn of the Dead is an interesting movie to me. Again, basically to me, I mean, I think this is on the same level of Day of the Dead. I mean, not Day of the Dead, but Night of the Living Dead. Brilliant movie, awesome special effects. Thematically, it really goes with like what Romero was doing at the time. And this is sort of the beginning where he does sort of like these comic booky type movies, which were different from his more like gritty stuff that he did earlier, as we've already explored. These are more sort of like polished, and though they're still like really mean spirited, like the movies that he's done before, like really deeply mean spirited. That they're also like they also have like an air of fun, and they have this sort of comic book quality to them, which a lot of people sort of ascribe to like both his editing style and sort of the makeup effects mistakes of Tom Savini. I don't even care if people consider them like mistakes. I really like the look of these zombies, and it's sort of a trademark thing, you know. It's like you don't see zombies like this ever. Like this is the only type of movie that has these zombies in it, and I don't know, the makeup effects are fantastic. This is one of those earlier movies where that they sort of got into this. It sort of laid the ground for what would come in the 80s, which was like these movies that were huge special effects oriented, like cult and horror and sci-fi movies. You know, stuff like Dawn of the Dead was sort of like the early part of it. And then you got the granddaddy of all of them, which is like The Thing. And then even Day of the Dead would do the same thing. Return of the Living Dead. Pretty much every one of the big horror directors had something like that. But Dawn of the Dead really, to me, sort of kicked off that idea where the special effects were the star of the movie. But the movie's more than that. It's got an interesting social idea, and this is, I think, the first movie where George Romero really wants to write, okay, so this is the first of my zombie movies that really, like, I'm going to write an actual social commentary into it. Because this is all about consumerism, and I wouldn't say necessarily about capitalism, but I would say it's about materialism more than that, believing that all that we need is the stuff that's in the stores, which I think goes with sort of who Romero is. I mean, sort of a lapsed Catholic, a guy that, you know, should be living for something above himself. And I think he sort of holds on to some of those values, and that's injected into Dawn of the Dead and apparently Martin, because from what you said, John, sounds like it's got a lot of like Catholic guilt kind of stuff dripping on it, which I of course always love. I'm a big Frank Miller fan, and that's like his biggest theme is like Catholicism as it relates to guilt and the flesh and stuff like that. Dawn of the Dead is brilliant in that respect. It's really well written, fantastically edited. It's got some of the best cinematography of the era. I mean, the cinematography in this movie goes head to head with huge budget movies of that era. It's got a great look to it. It's really well lit. Everything about the movie is just fantastic. The characters are just so well drawn, and I think there's not really that bad of a performance in this entire movie. It's really good from beginning to end as far as like the acting is concerned, and everything with the way George directs it. In a way, this is one of the most perfect movies that has ever existed, because it's a flawless horror movie. Like, you can't find a horror movie that's better made than Dawn of the Dead. You can find ones that are equally well made, but there's not a single one that's like higher above it, I think. Brilliant movie. I wouldn't say like it's personally one of my favorites, because it's gotten some interesting rewatchability for me, but it doesn't have quite that much rewatchability as other movies. I would put it above Night of the Living Dead on my like personal list. I think it's a more developed movie. than Night of the Living Dead and a more thought through movie, and it's more impressive in general. Not quite as gritty, much more comic booky, as we will see with his films to come later, like Night Riders and Creep Show, and of course the movies past that. Even I would even say that maybe a little bit of that comic book stuff is a little bit on Day of the Dead. Maybe not a whole lot, but a little bit. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic movie, and recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it. But I don't think there are many people who would watch a live cast like this who haven't seen Dawn of the Dead. But if you haven't, it's a movie that's fantastic. It's even one of those movies where Roger Ebert, who from all reports was not a huge horror fan, loved Dawn of the Dead. So there you go.
Wow. that is an A+ review, Steve. I give you an A+.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know what to say really, because I feel like you both really said it all, and that's weird because this is, of all the movies ever, this is number one. Like this and A Clockwork Orange are probably my number 1 and 2 movies of all time, and I think it's because it's amazing. It's an amazing movie. It really is, because you have one of the best ensemble casts, and they're all no names. Like maybe Ken Foree was a little, but Heiniger and David Enke, he hired them. They both worked at a diner. Like what? Like that is so freaking crazy to me. That like my favorite horror movie ever. 2 of the 4 main cast members were hired from a diner that Romero just happened to go to. And I love everything about the factor, the effects, all the dialogue and the character moments in this mall. All this great stuff in that attic place. I really like all that stuff a lot as well. The look of the zombies, of course, the blue zombies, walking around, the commentary on consumerism. And I really like how these characters really grow together. They don't just, it's not just like, well, what's great about it is, Galen Ross is kind of really weak when the film starts. There's not much to her. She's very flat, very one-dimensional. But by the end of the film, she's 3-dimensional. She grows so much as a character, but in the 2 hours and 8 minutes that this movie goes on. I mean, she really does grow from this kind of like, she's kind of a boring nothing character, into like, wow, I can't believe how good of a character this girl has become. She's so strong, capable, and she's a great shot. But I love how also they're David Emge and Peter. They're very, very not liking each other in the beginning. They're kind of skeptical towards one another. And David Emge almost ends up killing Ken Foree. He almost accidentally shoots him. And he's like, it's those things almost got you, Peter. And it wasn't one of those things, nearly blew me away. And I like that kind of scuffle, because these are people that, okay, maybe 3 of the 4 knew each other, but they kind of bond together. Even though they're not family, and even though they may not know each other all that well, it's just one of those great movies of how you get to work through hardship with other people, and how you get to in these times of disaster, how you can fun and make the light to it. I love the best parts of this movie is when they're playing golf in the mall, and they're playing the arcade game, and they're shooting mannequins on the ice skating rink, and all the music in the film, and all these, crazy nuances that Romero is able to add, like the nurse zombie and the, that religious song. I forget the damn name, the Harry Kershaw or something. I may have butchered that. I'm sorry. All these things, and of course the score by Goblin. And just the great character development of these characters. I just love all these little moments they have with one another. It all feels real. I think it's I think it is the best written film ever, because these people just clicked, and it was amazing. I can't say enough good things about Dawn of the Dead. My absolute all-time. I do have the signed Blu-ray.
Wow.
George Romero. got this. Yeah, this is one. I just think it's the most perfect movie. I don't think there's anything you could change about it. I love the ending. I love all the performances. I love the writing. I think it's a brilliantly edited film, and I think that there really is no better than George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. I think it truly is the Bret Hart of horror movies. It's the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. I don't think it can be improved upon, and I don't think, I really don't think after this we've gotten anything close. I really don't think that. I think it's a perfect movie. 10 out of 10 all the way. Best film ever.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely, bro. I agree with everything that you guys said. It's just such a perfect film that, once again, I just get amazed by looking at the budget. Like, I don't even, I'm like looking it up, and I was like, it costs that much to make this movie. And it's just interesting hearing all the backstories about how, you know, a lot of the earlier stuff, like, I guess you got the mall and they would shoot from until the mall closes until right before the mall opened. So they had that much time to shoot. It was just incredible, like, how he made this movie feel. Like, you really do feel it's like an apocalypse movie. And the budget wasn't that great. Like, it was, I'm trying to look it up here real quick, but it was about $650,000 to make this movie. That is a very, very low budget. It's not even $1 million to make this movie, but, you know, it's incredible what he did. It really is. And I really do agree with you on the bonding of these characters and what they go through. And I like that moment, the most powerful moment of the movie to me. That's even more powerful than the gore. It's even more powerful than the shocking stuff. Is the moment where they finally realize that this apocalypse is starting to get to them. You know, Galen Ross says a line where she's like, you know, what have we done to ourselves?
Oh,
and it's sort of that. Yeah, it's like that moment where they realize, I mean, how they got to cope with this. Their friend just died, and they just killed a bunch of people in the mall. They were zombies, but they look at it, they're like, yeah, those were still people. And they really, in a lot of zombie movies, they kill the zombies and like, yeah, smashing heads. But this is one of those very few zombie movies that really was like, okay, in real life, would you really be doing that? Would you really be, you know, hacking and slashing at people like that and, you know, not second thinking it? This movie really thought it like, you know, no, that would affect people because they're zombies that are trying to kill you. But these are still people. These were everyday people just turned into zombies. And, you know, I love that section of the movie where there's not much of a score to it. The music doesn't really come up too much, and it's just like a slow bit of the film that is just dialogue and the idea of what would happen in a real apocalypse. Like, that's just how it would legitimately happen. It would affect people. It would be emotionally scarring, and it would be just a unbelievably horrifying experience. And I also just really I agree with you guys. I do enjoy the fact that this movie is studying consumerism. It is studying how people take for granted what they get, and, you know, buying everything, getting the newest clothes, getting all this stuff. And I like how it's like also, if greed gets to you in the movie, greed's a bad thing. So I like how in this movie how, you know, Flyboy is wanting to get out of there, but it's like, it's ours. We took it. It's ours. From the greed of having them all, shot at the bikers and thus got him killed. You know, and it also does involve the greed of the bikers, you know, just them being greedy, you know, people, and going into this mall, attacking the mall for greed, let them getting devoured by zombies. And, you know, it's just an incredible message behind that. But sorry, I'm rambling way too long about that, but it's just really great. Going on to the next movie, yeah, it's just like a great movie, just flawless film. I totally agree with you guys, flawless. But going back here on the list, I think we have one movie in between our last movie we were talking about, and that is Night Riders. Now, I have not seen this. I believe John hasn't seen this either. Steve, have you seen this movie yet? I have no clue what it's about. I know it's not really a horror film, but I don't know. Steve?
Well, here's what I can say about it. First off, I'd like to apologize for the fact that I had to leave. I had to come and go and talk to some people for a minute. But anyway, I'm back, and I'm sorry I skipped out on John's review because I'm sure he said some insightful stuff. Of course, he always does. But this being his favorite movie, of course, it's gonna be especially insightful. And I'm sorry I skipped out on yours too, Nate. You always say insightful stuff too. I'm sorry to say that I have not seen Knight Riders either, but I do know a little bit about it. Romero's really big attempt to get away from the image of himself as just a horror director, which, you know, I think he tried it in the past. I mean, obviously, there's always vanilla, but he wasn't really established at that time until probably I'd say the either the Crazies or Season of the Witch. But this was really his huge attempt to not be a horror guy. And this was his attempt at like a serious drama. And I also think this is the film that was sort of like the movie where he wanted to. It's sort of like his what you'd call his prize movie. And I'll explain that a little bit. Usually in Hollywood, you guys might know this, but usually in Hollywood or the film business in general, once you have paid your dues per se with like a huge franchise or made the studio a lot of money, they'll give you this opportunity to make whatever movie you want to, and they'll give you like full creative control, and you won't have to give a flying flip about what anybody says. This is Romero's movie where he did that. You know, the same thing is sort of true for Carpenter on The Thing. Same thing is true for Christopher Nolan when he did Inception. But this is that kind of movie for him. Again, I haven't seen it, but that's sort of the idea that I get from like what I've read about it. It's a movie about these jousters in a fair, and it's all about this sort of family dynamic during a Renaissance fair. I don't know. It's supposedly like super long, like over 2 hours long about this Renaissance fair. And apparently it's good. I haven't seen it, but a lot of people give some good reviews of it. Shout Factory put out what is supposedly a pretty darn good Blu-ray. They put that out recently, maybe like a couple years ago. Not on their Scream Factory label, just the regular Shout Factory. This is, of course, before Shout Selects. But yeah, that's pretty much what I know about Knight Riders. I hear it's good. It has nothing to do with the crazy, awesome '80s TV show starring David Hasselhoff, but it's supposedly pretty good. So that's what I know about Knight Riders.
Yeah, I have not heard much about it at all. I had no clue what the plot was. I know it got a high rating on IMDb. I believe it got a high rating on IMDb, but I just didn't really hear too much about it. But it's definitely an interesting film. The runtime part, I don't know. Over 2 hours, if it's good. I'm not gonna judge it just because of runtime, but I just really hope that it's gonna be a good runtime and it runs with it really well.
Mm-hmm. John, do you have anything to say about Knight Riders?
It's one of 2 Romero films that I have yet to see, believe it or not. This and There's Always Vanilla are the 2 I have not seen. This is the only one of the 2 that I actually really like to see as well. And which got on my way. I've always seen it, but it's always like over $20 for the Blu-ray. I'm always like, oh man, you can like, is there really that, like, no offense to Knight Riders, but is it really that big of a demand? Like, why does it have to be so damn like $20? Like, it should be $50 at the most. But I don't know. As soon as, like, if I ever see it on sale for $10, but even if it's the DVD, I don't even care. I don't care what it is. Like, once I can see it for cheap, I will buy it. Like, no doubt about it. It's definitely one of those movies in the future I will see and check out, and something I really always wanted to see, especially because it's the film made by the filmmaker that made my favorite movie. It's the first film he made after. So I'm hoping some of that magic could, carry itself over and, hopefully. But I've never seen it at all. I do know Stephen King's in it. And I do know that Ed Harris is in it, and they both would have go on to be in his next film, which I absolutely love as well.
That's a good segue, Nate.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into the next movie, which is probably going to be the last thing we're going to be talking about in this part, the first part of the George Romero broadcast, and it is our review in our own way, or our thoughts on Creepshow. Now, the thing with Creepshow is this is a movie that, growing up as a kid, my friend had it on DVD. He's like, "Have you seen Creepshow?" I'm like, "No, what's that?" I'm doing an attempt at doing my earlier voice, but, I was like, "What's that?" And I seen the cover. I'm like, "Wow, looks pretty cool." And I watched it, and I just fell in love with it, man. Like, it's a really entertaining time. I just love the anthology aspect to it, how it did that so well, how all the stories pretty much, I know a few of the stories people aren't fans of, but I'm a fan of all the stories pretty much. I think they're all great. And even like the ones where it's like, well, the beginning one, and, whatever it's called, tied you over. I'm like, I like those, people are like, well, those are kind of bad. I'm like, I enjoy them. But, it's just a great anthology film, and it has a good sequel too, Creepshow 2. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a great third movie because I'm never going to pay for that movie. I am never paying for Creepshow. That's one of those movies, along with like the Amityville sequels, up to I got part 4 and I get the remake, so that's probably as far as I'm going to go. But I'm not getting any more Amityville movies because I looked it up. There's like 26 movies. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. 26 movies? Come on. There's like Amityville Asylum, Amityville Dollhouse, all this crazy stuff. I am not purchasing those. That's too much money. That's too much money on those movies. I already know they're going to be bad because I've seen reviews and trailers and footage, and they look horrible. But Creepshow 3 is a movie I'm never going to buy. I found a free version on YouTube. That's the only way I'm going to see it. But, I seen the beginning credits of it, and it looked awful. So, and I've heard it was bad. I heard it was really bad. But however,
10 words to me.
Creepshow 2. Have you seen Creepshow 3?
I've seen Creepshow 3, yeah, and I wish I hadn't. It is absolutely top 10, top 5 worst movie ever, in my opinion. Next to the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, it's like one of my least favorite movies. Oh my God, it is just beyond awful.
Yeah, I heard some bad stuff about it.
Yeah. This is, and it's not even like a brilliantly bad movie. Like there's like bad movies you can really enjoy. I mean, of course we know this. I mean, we're huge horror movie fans. Obviously, we know these so bad they're good movies. But this is like not even brilliantly bad. It's just plain bad, like dull, and like almost nothing to do with the motif of the original Creepshow series. Apparently, I think even it was like not even supposed to be a Creepshow movie, and they just sort of slapped Creepshow 3 on it because of name recognition. Now, I don't know what name recognition Creepshow would have had in freaking 2005 or whenever it was made, but I don't know.
You guys are scaring me though. You guys are. I'm terrified. This is one of those horror movies I'm truly terrified to see. I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. Like, I am legitimately worried about what I'm going to witness when I see this movie when I finally sit down and watch it one of these days. Like,
be very afraid.
Yeah, it's one of these movies where like you will feel like a little bit depressed that you lost like an hour and a half on it. Because like I paid money to watch it. I'll be totally honest.
Oh my God.
I was a Creepshow fan. I've been a Creepshow fan forever, and we'll get to that when I actually talk about Creepshow. But I was a Creepshow fan, and again, Hastings keeps coming up in this conversation. But hey, this is one thing that I can't ever forgive Hastings for actually letting me rent this. But like I was a teenager, like early teens, and I was sort of like, oh man, Creep Show 3. There's a Creep Show 3, and so I watched it. I paid money. I think it was like 49 cents to $1 or something like that to watch it for one night, and I hardly remember anything about the movie except for like a shower scene with a girl, and it's not even like a memorable scene because of like nudity, because there's zero nudity in it. It's just I have no idea why it's memorable. It just sort of, that's the only image that sticks in my head, this girl like about to get into a shower, and I can't think of anything else that it reminds me of. I can remember like the cover art because it's like got really crappy cover art.
Yeah.
But that's about it. And it really feels like it's something that's just sort of like that they wedged into the Creep Show legacy, and that's about it. So let's not ever even talk about Creep Show 3.
Understood. Completely understood. I actually seen a DVD at a DVD shop around here, and they wanted $25 for it. $25 for Creep Show 3. And you know what? At first, I was debating because I was like, "Ah, Creep Show 3? What? Creep Show 3? I'm like, this is freaking Creep Show 3?" Looked at the back of it, I'm like, this looks bad. The back of the case, you see some pictures, it looks awful. I'm like, well, before I make this purchase, because they had Phantasm for like $20, $30, something like that, and they had all these other like really high priced movies. I'm like, let me do some research on this movie before I actually even think about buying it. So I went home, seen some reviews, seen some pictures, seen some videos, and it looks like it's going to be really bad. It looks like it's going to be one of the worst horror films I will ever witness in my entire life. That's how bad it looks. So I'll definitely have to get ready for it. But like, let's get back to the good Creep Show movie, the one that's really good, like the good one. Creep Show 2 is good too. Let's get to the one that won't give me nightmares at night. So, well, it will give me nightmares, but not in the same way as Creep Show 3. It would give me good nightmares because I love the movie. But you know, Creep Show. So, what are your guys' thoughts on Creep Show?
You want to go first, John, or me?
You go first, since I keep going first.
All right, gotcha, brother. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, he was breaking up on me. I'm sorry, John, if I've cut you off. But anyhow, Creep Show. Let me find my Blu-ray here. Yeah. Creep Show is brilliant. I really love Creep Show. If I were to like say which George Romero movie was probably my favorite, it'd probably be Creep Show. It may not be the best movie he's ever made, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. I think it's maybe got some of the best cinematography of his career. Definitely some of the best lighting. It's got great editing. It's really well written, even though it's really cheesy. I think it's purposefully cheesy, though. I mean, this was the period where Stephen King, well, not exactly the period, but period right after Stephen King had published Night Shift, which was basically this collection of short stories that could basically have been EC Comics, and he sort of voiced his admiration for those movies in his introduction to Night Shift. And Creep Show is sort of him deciding that he's actually going to do one of these comic books that he used to love. And Romero, as it turns out, loved those comic books too, as did a lot of the horror filmmakers that came out at the time. And so they sort of teamed up, and Romero directed the movie. Stephen King did the screenplay, at the very least wrote all the stories for it. And George Romero, I think, maybe changed a little bit of stuff in the screenplay, but for the most part, it is almost entirely Stephen King. And I don't know. There's something about this movie I really love. And it could mostly be nostalgia because I did see this at a sort of young age. This is probably one of the first horror movies that I really saw. And it was one of the first horror movies where I was sort of conscious I was watching a horror movie. And I actually got told some of the stories from Creepshow as not really bedtime stories, but like stories to just sort of entertain me from my grandmother. My grandmother really loved Creepshow and had a DVD of it when I was a kid. But yeah, Creepshow it's a hard movie for me to talk about because I'll just start doting all over it. But I love the lighting even. Like I feel like the lighting for some reason is just great in this movie. The cinematography is great. The music actually is fantastic, and that's something I've sort of been leaving off when I've talked about these George Romero movies. But George Romero has a good ear for like music for movies. I know you guys talked a little bit about it with like Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. But like, first off, like the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack like changed the way that you sort of view zombie soundtracks because that's sort of like the Goblin score for Zombie, the Italian version of Dawn of the Dead, or really just Dawn of the Dead in general because they did score the American version as well. What they got and what they wrote and put in that movie sort of became the standard for zombie music. So, you get all these scores that are for like City of the Living Dead and Zombie Flesh Eaters, where they're like bass drum heavy and like synth heavy. And Creepshow, I think, has a brilliant soundtrack where it's so varied and there's so many different themes, and it plays on stuff that we sort of know because I don't know if you guys know this, but in you can sort of tell it just a little bit, but in the segment Something to Tide You Over, basically the score is a slowed down minor version of Camptown Ladies. And I'm serious about this. It's like I don't think anybody's ever confirmed it, but you listen to it a little bit, and it's basically Camptown Ladies, but just slowed down and made like creepy with sort of some backing synths. Yeah, I really love Creepshow, and I can't think of anything else to say about it, surprisingly. But I guess you can go ahead, John. Whatever you want to say about it.
Well, when it comes to Creepshow, I mean that's another top one. I'd love the whole concept behind it. King and Romero working together. Five jolting tales of horror. I mean, it's a movie that really is the like quintessential anthology horror film. Like when you think anthology horror film, you think Creepshow, and I think like I agree. It's a really well-made film for Romero. I think it's one of Romero's most well-made from a technical standpoint. I've actually, from that documentary, Just Desserts, he's saying that he wanted one to be in black and white, one to be this kind of genre, one to be that kind of genre. Like he really wanted to do even more with it than he ended up doing. But I don't know. There's something magical about this movie. The first segment, Father's Day, was always my least favorite. Even to this day, that's my least favorite segment of the five. Even if it though, like it has a lot of good things in it. Like it has those classic red and blue colors that come. I want my cake, Bedelia. That's classic horror imagery in my mind. Like that sticks with you. There's also a great Fright Rags T-shirt with that exact like artwork, and it is so awesome. It's really cool design. My favorite story was always the second one, the Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, and people go, "That was your favorite one?" Because it's so hokey and so it's barely horror. It's really not. It's almost like really dumb slapstick horror. But the greatness of Stephen King's role, like the horrible greatness, and the first thing he said, "Holy oh Jesus!" And he runs over. He runs over to the meteor shit, and the thing he hits it on his hand. He like scratched himself with it, put it in his mouth. You're watching this and you're just in awe of how dumb a person can be. Like you're like, this is like unbelievable how stupid. this guy could be. And I love also, he just, for a while, he just sits down, drinks a beer, and is watching like old school WWF tag matches. He's like yelling at the TV. He's drinking wine or whatever. Or no, he's drinking a couple beers. And then, all of a sudden he's like, and don't it itch, man. He's itching himself. Oh, man. It's the funniest shit ever. He's having like these premonitions or I guess, dreams of becoming rich, like bringing it to a doctor. And he's like, I want $200. It's just so hokey, man. I love it. It's such a good time. You laugh your ass off. Third story, Something to Tide You Over. Fantastic. Probably the best, like, overall, probably the best segment of the movie. Not my favorite, but definitely, I think, overall, I think it's the most well-made, but most well-acted. The coolest concept, too, of burying somebody, up to their neck in sand, and then they kind of drown with the waves hitting them, and I can hold my breath for a long time, and just great stuff. I love Leslie Nielsen as a villain. He does a great job. Like, nobody ever mentions him.
Yeah,
in this,
just great.
How well he does an amazing job as a villain in this movie. And then you move on to The Crate, which I always kind of found like it was too long. It's a really good one, but it's a little too lengthy for me. I like some of the humor in it and stuff like that, but like when he's killing Adrian Barbeau, like that stuff's really.
Hey.
Other than that one just always kind of like halfway through it, I'm like, all right, I kind of want to skip to the end. And then the last one, They're Creeping Up on You. Love that one. Love the act.
That's great.
Love the.
It got out of control too. Like on the set, they got cockroaches running everywhere. I heard it got out of hand.
Yeah,
like, they were running everywhere.
They would, like the big ones were George, small ones were King, and the medium-sized ones were Savini. I love that stuff. I love that kind of like when you hear stories like that, like they named the cockroaches. Like how great is that? Awesome. I just love everything about this movie. I love the comic book transitions, the Tom Atkins stuff in the beginning of he's like, I found this with your sex books, and he smacked, like it's so horrible. Like it's like not really written. Like who wrote that? But it's great. I think Creepshow is a really fun time. It's a great, like, if you want to show somebody a fun horror film, just one that you can turn your brain off and enjoy, I don't think there's really a better choice than Creepshow. Like, it is just a really, really fun horror flick. I think it's one of Romero's best, and it's a top 20 horror film of mine. Totally check Creepshow out if you haven't, if you're watching this. It's a great time.
And honestly, like it's a movie you could actually show, sort of a middle-aged child. Like you could show this to a 10-year-old and they would be a little creeped out, but they'd be fine. I mean, there's not a whole lot of like graphic nudity. There's not too much violence. It's just a sort of a fun, creepy time. But I did want to say a couple things. Like, I think you're totally justified in having your favorite one be Jordy Verrill, because, like, I mean, it's sort of like if you like Maximum Overdrive, King's Maximum Overdrive, or if you like King's short stories, you'll like Jordy Verrill. If you're a fan of like his bigger novels or like his more serious, like the movies that he made, you're probably not going to like Jordy Verrill, and probably you won't really like this movie too well. But if you're like a huge Stephen King fan and you know the stuff and you love all the stuff, Jordy Verrill is going to be one of your favorites. And if I think if I ever meet Stephen King, I'm just going to like walk up to him and say, Jordy Verrill, what? Talk to me about it. Because like what kind of mind process do you have to go through, not just like act it out, but like to write it? Because that's something he wrote. I don't know. It's a brilliant segment, and it's got like this sort of deep, dark undercurrent like right beneath it, but it's just so weird and over the top at the same time. And the same thing goes for like, I don't know, like I kind of agree about Father's Day. It's just sort of kind of boring in a way. I mean, it's got the movie has a great start. Father's Day sort of just kind of falls flat after the second or third time you watch it. It's fine the first time, but like on repeat viewings, you just sort of want to go like, I'm gonna skip to Jordy Verrill. And then after that, like also, um, I, I gotta say, like my favorite's probably um, it's sort of like either between they're creeping up on you or something that tied you over. Probably something to tide you over, because I think, just like you said, Leslie Nielsen plays like a crazy awesome villain in that movie, in that segment. And like again, nobody gives him credit, just like you said, John. And apparently I don't know how they got like such a great product out of that particular segment, because apparently like Leslie Nielsen was just sort of like running around the set with a fart machine and just like farting on everybody with his fart machine.
That's great.
And he was even a comedian when he wasn't in a serious role, and he's sort of a fun villain anyway. But I don't know. And again, like throughout all of this movie, it's all like it's all fun, but right beneath the surface is this deep, dark stuff that's just running so deep, and like really, if you look at it, is so creepy. And it combines sort of like the Catholic, like former Catholic stuff of Romero, combining it with like the former Methodist of Stephen King, and sort of like both of their sort of ideologies, like the sort of half liberal, sort of libertarian kind of beliefs right beneath the surface. I don't know. I really enjoy this movie, and yeah. Do you guys want to talk at all about the sequels or sort of like the legacy, really quick of it?
I figured like a good way to end this would be if you were to make like your fan edit of like your top 5 creep show stories, what would that be? Like, because I would actually, I love the second movie, and I actually would take 2 from the second movie and have like my ultimate creep show film. This has always just been a question I just wanted to, like, it's quirky, but I wanted to know, like, so what would basically your top 5 stories be if you could have like, your, creep show film?
You want to start off with this real quick, Nate?
So,
well, actually, Nate, if you don't mind, actually, I have to get off pretty quickly. So, do you mind if I do it and then sort of pop off and you guys can finish out?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, brother. Sorry about that. But anyway, I will have to get going, so I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. So I love Creepshow and Creepshow 2, almost equally in sort of a way, because I think there are some really good things in Creepshow 2. But I also really like Tales from the Dark Side, which is sort of an unofficial Creepshow sequel, the movie that is. And then sort of Tales from the Dark Side the TV show was supposed to be Creepshow, the TV show, but they didn't want to do that for whatever reason. So I'm just going to sort of say that, like, with Tales from the Dark Side, the TV show, sort of like put that to the side, although it is a fantastic show. And anybody who hasn't seen it should see it. And a good way to get it is in this huge box set. It's like $30, but it's worth it because it's hours upon hours upon hours of entertainment that will keep you busy for like a year if you really want it to. And then, so besides that, I'd have to say that probably my top 5 Creepshow episodes, I guess you could say, no particular order, would be Something to Tide You Over. Let's see. Probably Chief Woodenhead, The Hitchhiker, and I'd probably They're Creeping Up on You. Yeah, probably 3 from the original and like 2 from the sequel. And again, I really like Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, but it's just sort of, it's just not quite as good, even though it has some really fun, awesome segments. And I feel really bad for sort of not even including it because it's great. But yeah, those would probably be my favorites. But yeah, those are all good atmospheric segments, and people like actually people will like make fun of you for liking Old Chief Woodenhead, but I like Old Chief Woodenhead, and I can't help it. And it's mostly because, oh, what's the guy's name that plays the shop owner? You guys know it, I'm sure somebody does.
He's from Naked Gun.
His name's George Kennedy.
Yeah, George Kennedy, who is of course awesome, and I think maybe died recently.
He did.
Yeah, which is really sad, but he's so good in that, and I think that just sort of him and sort of what he does to sort of almost preside over the rest of the segment is just really cool. By the way, this is a really crappy Blu-ray, but it's serviceable. I'd love to get the Arrow Blu-ray, but that's expensive. So anyhow,
expensive.
Yeah, I mean everything from Arrow is really expensive. Like I think the most I've ever paid for Arrow is like somewhere around $30, and it was for a movie that is like, it's fun, but it's not like a masterpiece. And that's The Mutilator, which I really like, but most people don't. But anyway, I gotta get going. So rock on, guys. Thanks for inviting me. Good to see you again, John, and good to see you again, Nate. Hope you guys have a good finish to the podcast, and I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Be good. Buddy.
Have a good night, man. See you later.
All right.
For me though, for my list, it was the top five stories.
Yeah, your top 5 from the series. I figured that'd be a good way to wrap this up.
Yeah. Once again, I don't think I have an order to it because they're all great segments, but it had to be The Raft, The Crate, The Lonesome Death of Judy. What's his last name?
Barrel.
Merrill.
Jordy
Wait, Barrel. Okay, yeah. Merrill. And I definitely would probably say Chief Woodenhead. And to be honest, probably something that tied you over segment. Those are my 5 favorites. They're all just great, and they're well directed. And Creepshow 2, even though I don't think it's as good as the first movie, I don't think it's as nearly good as the first movie, but I do think it's still a fantastic sequel. Like, it's one of those underrated sequels. I didn't hear much about Creepshow 2. I heard a lot about Creepshow 1, but I didn't hear too much about Creepshow 2. Unfortunately, well, I didn't really hear much about Creepshow 3 either, but, until I started looking at some reviews, and yeah, it's Creepshow 3. But Creepshow 2 is just a great sequel. I have the Midnight Madness series DVD, which literally only has a trailer. It's pretty bad, dude. There's no features at all. But it does have some good picture quality and decent audio quality for what it is. But yeah, it was my top 5. And this Creepshow in general is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It literally says it. It's the most fun you'll ever have being scared. And it really is. It really is a great horror film to watch. It's a fun time. And it's well directed. I love how the background will fade out at times into a comic book background. And, they're screaming, the background sort of fades out to a comic book. I love that. My favorite segments from both movies have to be Crate from the first movie and The Raft from the second one. They're just both really great movies and great segments in the movie, and just really, really enjoy them. But John, you got anything else you want to say, man?
I'll just give my top 5 real quick. I would go with The Raft, Something to Tide You Over, the Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. They're creeping up on you, and I'd probably go with Old Chief Woodenhead as my 5th. No order there, but yeah, those would be my top 5 as well. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for having me on this whole thing. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely, man. I wanted to thank all of you guys for watching. I want to thank everybody for joining. John, Steve, Gideon. It was a great time, and it was a great discussion, and I can't wait to get to part 2 eventually. It took us a while to do this video because we've all been sort of busy, just sort of a busy time right now, but whenever I can get time and schedule another event up, I will definitely do it. But thanks, guys, so much for watching. Thank you, John, for joining. It was a fun time, and it was a pleasure having you guys here. But anyways, guys, I'm the Explorer 4, Horror by 465, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Bye, guys. And once again, thanks, Sean Garner, for the video. Bye, guys.
No problem. Peace.
Explorer 4 out.